Most disturbing last request of death row inmates. Hi everyone, have you ever wondered what some of the most bizarre final wishes made by death row inmates were? I'm fine with it, yes, I'm prepared to go. Hey, I was tortured at PCI today. Let's look at 5 of the most unsettling final requests made by death row inmates in this video. Number 5. John Henry. Ramirez, John Henry, he is John Henry Ramirez, and in an attempt to rob him, he fatally stabbed 45-year-old Pablo Castro, a store clerk. The irony of the tale is that, despite taking only $1.24 from the scene, he managed to elude the law for 3 years before being apprehended in 2007 at the Mexican border. He was later found guilty of murder in 2008 and given the death penalty. At the time of his arrest, Ramirez, who was 22 years old, had a criminal history that included aggravated assault, burglary, and indecent exposure. During the time of the murder, he was accused of additional crimes such as burglary and another stabbing. Due to numerous legal challenges, his trial was postponed for many years, but in the end, he was found guilty of the crime and given the same death sentence as everyone else. I just messed up, Mr. Bad, and now I'm going to pay for that, and I accept that. In the middle of 2021, the state declared that Ramirez would be executed by lethal injection in September. He even acknowledged that he would be held accountable for his actions, and he asked the state to allow his pastor to touch him while he was being executed. However, the state eventually denied his request, and in August he filed a lawsuit against the state for doing so. In March 2022, the Supreme Court granted Ramirez a request, stating that the denial of his request was taking away his free exercise of religion. This lawsuit led to a further delay in his execution, but in the end, he got his request granted and was executed in March 2022. The suit alleges that the state allowed Ramirez's request for his pastor to lay hands on him and pray during his time of death and his rights for the free exercise of religion and amounts to religious discrimination. Number 4. Jee Hawthorne. This next death row convict, who is serving a death sentence for the October 1984 murder of 3 of his family members, asked to have his body fed to fish rather than for a preacher to touch him or say a prayer. The primary goal of the murder was to inherit the $150,000 property settlement by pushing the family members out of the way. However, to their surprise, Gene Sr. had already changed his will and taken Gene Jr.'s name out of the property settlement after the murder. Gene, his accomplice James Lee Beathard, and Gene attacked Linda Jane Sr. and their teenage son Marcus. In an attempt to allay police suspicions, Gene dispersed cigarette butts and the hairs of an African-American person around the scene. However, a thorough investigation proved that Gene was the one responsible for the killings, and during his trial, he accused Beathard of being the one responsible for the killings, despite his claims that he had only fired through the window. Beathard was later found guilty and executed despite his denials. Gene was also found guilty, but he stood up to defend his innocence during his trial. His lawyer also claimed that in the 1985 trial, it was not mentioned that he had been abused by his father, which was the primary cause of his hatred towards the family. However, his last and most disturbing request before he passed away was that, should his appeal to prove his innocence fail, his body be used as an art installation that can serve as a larger project on the death penalty. He gave his consent to Julian, an artist born in Marco Everest, who planned to deep freeze Jen's body and then turn it into fish food that visitors to his exhibition could feed. Number 3. Frank Atwood. Frank Atwood, who was found guilty in 1987 of whipping and killing 8-year-old Vicky Hopkinson. He was charged with first-degree murder. Atwood had a history of sexual assault and had also violated a California law by sexually abusing a 7-year-old boy. During his trial, the prosecution referred to him as a mentally disabled sex offender and demanded the death penalty due to the seriousness of his offense, but he attempted to maintain his innocence. Atwood spent 30 years on death row waiting for his execution. However, the judge, John Hawkins, who presided over the trial, was not convinced that he had been found guilty and would be executed in 2 months. This was because there had been a partial pause in the execution in Arizona during the execution of another prisoner, whose drug dose proved insufficient, causing the prisoner to gasp for air for more than an hour before passing away. After the state resolved all legal issues and resolved the dosage issue, they scheduled the execution to take place on June 8, 2022. Before 1992, when the state law permitted executions in gas chambers, Atwood was given the option to be executed by lethal injection or by legal gas. However, things take a troubling turn at this point, as Atwood decides to die by lethal gas. He also requests nitrogen gas in place of the state-issued gas, but this request is later denied, and he is executed by lethal injection. Number 2. Thomas Douglas Arthur. Thomas Douglas Arthur was found guilty of Troy Wicker's 1982 murder in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and was scheduled to be executed on May 25, 2022. Following an affair, Judy, Troy's wife, testified in court that she gave Thomas $10,000 to kill her husband. In 1977, while working as a carer for his sister-in-law in Decatur, Arthur got to know Judy through a work release program. Thomas acknowledged killing his sister, but he insisted he was not involved in Troy Wicker's murder. According to Thomas's lawyer, the prosecutor accused Thomas of Troy's death to spare him the death penalty and maybe grant him parole. Being on death row since 1983, Arthur has escaped death numerous times, making him one of the longest-serving prisoners there. His 1991 conviction was affirmed, and his execution was set for May 17th, making it the 7th time he had been slated to die. His first conviction in Wicker's death was reversed, and even the second one was overturned. It was unsettling the way Arthur desired to die. Arthur, having accepted his fate, asked to be executed by firing squad as opposed to the more customary method of lethal injection. While he was imprisoned, he suffered a back ailment and was provided with a wheelchair. Arthur made the unusual request because he believed that the medicines used to cause the death via lethal injection caused suffering. However, the court denied his plea, and on May 27, 2022, he was put to death. Number 1. Smith, James Edward. One of the strangest requests of all comes from James Edward Smith, a Kentucky-born murderer who was convicted. His last request also made headlines in 1990. His story begins in 1952, since as a child he was known for his love for the outdoor activities, and often liked to spend time camping and hiking along with his family. He used to work as a taxi driver in Houston, Texas. But however, as he grew older, he fell in with the wrong people and started to commit petty crimes. In March of 1983, Smith attacked a teller at the Union National Life Insurance Company in Texas. At the time of the attack, he was armed and was wearing a mask, and ordered the teller to hand over all the cash. But unfortunately, 44-year-old Larry Rose was the district manager of the office, and Smith ordered him to hand over all the money. Rose did as said, but Smith still shot the innocent clerk and ran away from the building. But with the help of the office workers and several people on the streets, he was arrested, and the money was recovered. He even tried to run outside a courtroom, but failed, and he was later given the death penalty for the murder of Rose. His last request was a meal, which was not an ordinary one, but a sand meal. He requested rotunda dirt as his last meal, as he believed that it would help him reincarnate, as he believed in voodoo rituals, but the state did not allow such strange requests, and in the end he was executed in 1990. So this is the end of our today's video. Do you like it? Kindly give your valuable response in our comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting and informative videos.